Marking 35 years since the mass killing at l'École Polytechnique in Montreal. 14 young women murdered at the engineering school. Today, Toronto reflects on what is also the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women. Good afternoon. Vigils and other ceremonies are being held across the country today to commemorate the grim anniversary of the Montreal Massacre.
It's been 35 years since the deadly mass shooting at l'École Polytechnique. On December 6, 1989, a man walked into a classroom and opened fire, killing 14 women. 14 others were injured. Throughout the attack, the gunman could be heard yelling he hated feminists. 20 minutes after it started, he took his own life. One survivor of the shooting says it was horrific.
It was not acceptable. It was an horror it created. And I have so much pain still inside of me when I imagine the grief it was for those families who lost their daughters. So I hope we'll be able to build a world, to build a country, to build a society where we will be able to stop things before it happens, where we'll be able to take care of those who suffer a lot.
Among the other vigils and commemorations nationwide, 14 beams of light will illuminate the sky above Mount Royal in Montreal at 5:10 p.m., the time the horrific event started. And a memorial is also being held at the Women's College Hospital here in Toronto. CTV's Sean Thong is there.
Nathan, the memorial happening inside right now, just getting underway. Now, what we're expecting today is they will be honoring the 14 women who were killed in l'École Polytechnique back in 1989, but also they're focusing on this year, the 60 people who were victims this past year and naming them as well. We're expecting Mayor Olivia Chow to be in attendance. But we also wanted to focus on the 35th anniversary of l'École Polytechnique. And we heard this morning from a reporter who actually covered the event and tells this heartbreaking story. Here's what she had to say.
One of the things that I remember absolutely just was chilling was it was freezing, it was icy, people couldn't walk. And there were these two women who arrived at the scene, and they were mothers, and they had children at the École Polytechnique, young women who were there. And they were shouting their names. And there was a crush of reporters who swarmed them, wanting to ask them if they knew anything, because there was no police spokesperson at the time. And we all sort of surrounded them. One of the women slipped and fell on the ice and just stood up crying, mascara running, and shouting out her daughter's name. It gives me the shivers thinking of it just at the time. The other woman helped pick her up, and they went running off. They found a police officer. We had no communication with the police because one of the most tragic coincidences happened that day. The police officer who was tasked with, giving the reporters updated information, the PR fellow, he went inside to find out what was going on so he could come out and brief the reporters. He went inside and never came out again because his daughter was among the victims. He found his daughter there.
Now, inside at the ceremony that's happening over the noon hour, we're expecting to hear from members of staff from the Women's College Hospital and, of course, Mayor Olivia Chow. And we'll have more coming up tonight at CTV News at 5 and 6. Reporting live, I'm Sean Thong. Michelle, send it back to you.
Thank you, Sean. And last night on the eve of the anniversary, Ottawa announced it's banning 324 more models of what the government calls assault-style firearms. All the newly prohibited weapons are semi-automatics with sustained rapid-fire capability. Under the new rules, these firearms can no longer be legally used or sold in Canada. They join more than 1,500 weapons that Ottawa banned in 2020 in the aftermath of the Nova Scotia mass shooting. The move is getting mixed reviews from gun control advocates and opponents.
Turning now to a brazen shooting in a Brampton driveway.
We're learning more about the deadly incident that was all captured on camera. 2 men were shot, one fatally, the other taken to hospital. CTV's John Musselman continues his coverage from Brampton. John.
Well, Michelle, we're on the driveway at 7 Odeon, and this is where it happened. Now, this morning, Peel Regional Police, we'll just show you some video now. They removed a Honda, a vehicle that was in the driveway yesterday. It's been removed from the scene for more forensic investigation. There were bullet holes in that vehicle. And it was the 2 men who were standing beside that vehicle that were ambushed or targeted by the gunman who showed up in a white sedan and got out and opened fire on the victim. Now, we were able to speak to a source who tells us that the family had moved in here about a month ago. They are leasing a portion or possibly all of the house. He didn't have much other information beyond that. Neighbors also confirmed that the people who were living here were renting at the time. Now, there was also another shooting in Caledon shortly after the night the man was shot here in the driveway. Peel Regional Police say they are linked, but we don't know what the link is or what the motive behind it is. But again, we're still trying to piece together some of the information here. Peel Police say there is no update yet today and no identity on the victim here in connection with this homicide in Brampton. Reporting live from the scene, I'm John Musselman. I'll send it back to you.
All right. Thank you, John. Hamilton police are investigating a robbery at a jewelry store last night. It happened just before closing time at Ancaster Jewelers on Wilson Street West. Police say a vehicle was driven into the front of the store. Investigators say the owner had a gun pointed at him. He was taken to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. No word on how much jewelry was taken, but police say the getaway vehicle was found nearby. 5 suspects were taken into custody.
Still ahead on CTV News at noon, the search continues for the killer of healthcare executive Brian Thompson. New York police are combing through surveillance videos today. We'll have the latest details on the situation coming up a little later in the newscast.
And we have more news in a moment, but first, here is a live look at the city this afternoon. Cloudy and windy out there, making it feel even chillier. If you have plans outdoors, be sure to bundle up. There's also a slight chance of some flurries throughout the day, but nothing major. And looking at the satellite radar picture, you can see that is some of the snow moving into our area. Again, we could see some off and on flurries, but nothing major. North of the city, there are concerns. There are watches and warnings. You've got a snow squall watch and a warning. If you are going to be driving north of the city, be careful, plan your routes. And if you don't have to drive around Barrie, make that Perry sound, or Barrie, probably a good idea not to today if you can hold off on that. If not, be very careful. Right now, we're sitting at -2 in Niagara Falls, -3 in Hamilton, -5 in Peterborough. We're below seasonal with the wind chill. It feels much cooler. At the islands, we're at -2, Pearson Airport -3, feeling chillier, and we're only going to move up to -1, so below the freezing mark. We'll give you a look at the long-range forecast later on in the show.
Canada's unemployment rate rose more than expected in November. Statistics Canada says a net 51,000 jobs were added across the country last month. It was accompanied by more people entering the workforce, prompting unemployment to rise to 6.8%. That's the highest it's been in nearly 8 years, excluding the pandemic. The report is the last major economic data to be released before the Bank of Canada makes its next interest rate announcement next week.
A new report suggests the soaring cost of groceries in this country won't be coming down anytime soon.
CTV's Paul Hollingsworth breaks down the forecasted increases and where Canadians will likely feel the pinch.
Shoppers say groceries are expensive, and the idea of more price hikes is hard to swallow.
Prices are rising and nothing really seems to be declining.
No. Shouldn't be that much.
But shoppers should brace themselves for even more bad news. According to Canada's Food Price Report, the cost of groceries will rise as much as 5% in 2025, outpacing the Bank of Canada's target inflation rate of 2%. A family of 4 will spend close to $17,000 on food next year, an extra $801 compared to 2024. Bakery items, dairy products, and fruit will rise between 1% and 4%. Meat prices will jump as much as 6%. Vegetables and restaurant meals could see a 5% hike. Sylvain Charlebois says some of these increases were predictable based on the current economic climate.
Vegetables are likely to be impacted by a lower dollar versus the American dollar. We import a lot of vegetables from outside our country, unfortunately.
The news may sound bleak, but there are ways for savvy shoppers to get some financial relief.
The one thing I would suggest to your viewers right now is to look for loyalty programs.
Charlebois says those programs offer more savings than ever as grocery chains look to attract repeat customers. President-elect Donald Trump's threat to impose 25% tariffs on Canada could further weaken the loony and drive up prices for food importers, which could cause even more inflation in the future. Paul Hollingsworth, CTV News, Halifax.
Brampton's Mayor Patrick Brown faced questions in Ottawa over allegations of foreign interference by India in the 2022 Conservative leadership race.
It's a race he lost to Pierre Poilievre. CTV's Judy Trin reports.
Are you worried about Michelle?
Pierre Poilievre was nonchalant about the testimony that was to come.
Your members are being targeted by Indian agents. Are you worried about that?
I think it's very worrisome that Justin Trudeau has made Canada a playground to foreign interference. Thank you.
After a national security report revealed there was political meddling by India in a Conservative leadership race, Brampton Mayor Patrick Brown and one-time leadership hopeful was summoned to testify about what happened in 2022.
I don't believe foreign intervention affected the final outcome of the Conservative leadership race. I believe that Pierre Poilievre was successful in that race because he signed 300,000 plus memberships.
But there was pressure. Brown said the Consul General of India and the Hindu nationalist lobby group, the Canada-India Foundation, made it clear to his staff that they weren't happy with his support of the Sikh community. A high-ranking diplomat called his campaign manager, MP Michelle Rempel-Garner.
Where there was concern from MP Garner about some of the language that I was using, and in Gujaras and the membership drives. There was concern from, I believe, the Consul General directly to the MP that I used the word Sikh Nation.
Radio Canada reported that Rempel-Garner was allegedly pressured by Indian agents to withdraw her support for Brown. Her office denies it. The MP was not and never has been coerced by any official of any foreign government in any matter. She calls any suggestions of that false and defamatory. The Liberals aren't buying it and want her to testify.
We think the testimony around confirming MP Rempel-Garner's involvement in conversations, I'd like to know what else was involved in those conversations.
Judy Trin, CTV News, Ottawa.
In Parliament, the Conservatives have tabled the latest in a series of non-confidence motions against Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's minority government.
The official opposition turned their focus to the NDP in the wake of the party tearing up its parliamentary deal with the Liberals.
If they're so outraged at how bad this Prime Minister is, all the things that are happening in this country, if they are upset on their rights of labor and unionized workers to be able to strike, if they truly met what they said outside this chamber, if they truly met what they said during question period and debates, when the question gets called and we have to stand, they should easily say what millions of Canadians want them to finally say. They do not have confidence in this Prime Minister.
The Conservative motion quotes NDP leader Jagmeet Singh's criticism of the Liberals after they intervened in a rail work stoppage. Singh has already said he won't vote for the motion. The Liberals said the non-confidence motion was a ploy.
What we have, rather, is a Conservative leader and a Conservative party trying to gaslight Canadians into thinking they're friends of workers. They are not. This Conservative leader has attacked union jobs and union wages as fattened union contracts. But my colleagues and I are proud that we've turned back this movement and proud of the significant progress that we've made over the years. And we're not going back, Mr. Speaker.
The vote on the non-confidence motion will take place in the House of Commons Monday. NDP support for the Liberals means it will not be able to reach a majority.
Former federal cabinet minister Randy Boissonnault has told a Commons committee that he is not Indigenous.
I have never attempted to leverage my adopted family's history for personal or political gain. I've never identified as Indigenous on any application form, nor have my businesses ever benefited as a result.
The Edmonton Liberal MP was called to testify before the Indigenous and Northern Affairs Committee over media reports that raised doubts over his past Indigenous heritage claims. Concerns have also been raised about his former business claiming to be Indigenous-owned when applying for federal grants. And the federal government is launching a new Arctic foreign policy to help deal with what it calls changing geopolitical dynamics. The policy commits to increasing domestic and international collaboration to ward off emerging foreign threats in the north. Global Affairs Canada points to the war between Russia and Ukraine, climate change, and growing strategic interests from non-Arctic states as key factors that have changed the landscape. The Arctic foreign policy will provide 5 years of funding with an initial investment of $34 million and $7 million ongoing.
Foreign state actors are increasing their activities in the north, and not just on land and sea. We see disinformation and propaganda to undermine our democratic institutions and divide Canadians. We see the targeting of diaspora communities and dissidents, cyber attacks, and espionage.
As part of the new policy, Canada is appointing an Arctic ambassador and opening 2 new consulates in the region, one in Anchorage, Alaska, the other in Greenland.
In a new report, Amnesty International is accusing Israel of committing genocide in the Gaza Strip during its war with Hamas.
The Palestinians of Gaza have been held in a nightmare day after day. Utter carnage has unfolded in front of the very eyes of the world, and there is no end in sight.
The group says Israel's actions cannot be justified by Hamas's October 7th, 2023 attack. Amnesty International also says the U.S. and other allies of Israel could be complicit in genocide and calls on them to halt arms shipments to Israel. Israeli officials are rejecting the organization's claims.
Amnesty has a documented history of framing Israel as fundamentally illegitimate. For Amnesty, Israel was born guilty in 1948 and have been guilty ever since. They ignore the genocidal intent and actions of Hamas.
Here in Canada, Foreign Affairs Minister Mélanie Joly reiterated calls for a ceasefire and the release of hostages.
A political scandal in Romania as the country's top court annulled the results of the country's presidential election. The court took that step after Romania's current president declassified intelligence this week, alleging Russia ran a sprawling social media campaign to promote a far-right candidate who got the most votes in the first round of the vote. Calin Georgescu had declared zero campaign spending, and his victory came as a shock in the NATO member country. He was set to face off against centrist candidate Elena Lasconi on Sunday, but that vote has been canceled. And demonstrations are continuing in Georgia after a disputed election there and a move by the former Soviet country to pause talks to join the European Union. Critics have accused the ruling party of promoting authoritarian pro-Russia policies and carrying out an ongoing violent crackdown on anti-government demonstrators.
Armed with a growing file of clues, New York police are going through surveillance videos today as the search continues for the killer of healthcare executive Brian Thompson. CTV's Scott Hurst is tracking this for us. Certainly this story's caught a lot of people's attention. What is the latest on the manhunt?
Good afternoon, Michelle. Due to the brazen nature of the shooting, the fact that it happened in broad daylight in a bustling part of Midtown Manhattan, and now you add to the fact that it's been 3 days and the NYPD, the largest police force in America, still can't track down this suspect. This case has really captured the attention of the world. So here are some of the key pieces of evidence that investigators are working with as possible leads continue to emerge with every passing day. We know that words were written on ammunition. A smiling surveillance photo has been released, which really shows a good portion of the person of interest here. You can see their face significantly. Discarded water bottle as well, and what appears to be a burner cell phone. So if we back it up a little bit and build a timeline, as investigators are doing right now, this is what they have. The suspect reportedly arrived in New York City 10 days before the shooting on a bus that originated from Atlanta, Georgia, which is leading investigators to work with the Greyhound Bus Company on any more possible leads. Investigators also believe the suspect used a fake ID checking into a hostel, and that is where the smiling photo was captured from. Also, minutes before the shooting, the suspect was apparently at a Starbucks buying a water bottle and 2 energy bars. Police say they've retrieved a fingerprint so far and are still working on that forensic evidence. So more and more evidence is being released publicly, and it appears police are getting more and more leads. But at this time, Michelle, no word on where this suspect could be at this time.
Hopefully it's only a matter of time. Are we getting any more of an idea on what the motive for this assassination could be?
Officially, that is still shrouded in mystery right now, but there are a few bits of information that can lead us to a potential motive that investigators are going down that avenue. They found the words "deny, defend, depose" on the bullet casings found at the scene, which appears to echo a phrase often used by insurance industry critics, and that phrase is delay, deny, defend. So is the killing directly related to his work? That is not officially out there, but investigators are using that as a possible theory. We also know that Thompson's wife has told American media he had previously been threatened. United Healthcare provides coverage for close to 50 million Americans and brought in more than $280 billion in revenue last year. All of this now part of a puzzle still incomplete for investigators, despite the apparent progress in retracing some of the gunman's steps so far. Now, days later, the suspect is still at large, and any official motive for the killing, Michelle, is still a mystery.
CTV's Scott Hurst live in the CTV National Newsroom. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.
Notre-Dame Cathedral in Paris will reopen its doors this weekend, 5 years after it was heavily damaged by fire.
When we arrived my first day and I saw the pile of oak logs at our workshop, I just started laughing with my colleagues. We just thought it was impossible. You know, we had 600 logs just for our part in the nave. And now, you know, I've seen those logs become this.
Tomorrow, the Archbishop will lead more than 1,500 guests in a special service. It will begin with him knocking on the cathedral doors. There will be a Mass held in the cathedral on Sunday. Tomorrow's ceremony will be televised and attended by heads of state and dignitaries, including Quebec's Premier and U.S. President-elect Donald Trump. And another look at the forecast, cloudy and windy out there, making it feel even cooler, that wind chill. So if you're out there, maybe going for a skate, bundle up, dress in layers. There's also a chance of some flurries here and there throughout the day, but nothing significant. And we will stay below the freezing mark throughout the day, but temperatures do rise a little bit next week. A look at the long-range forecast coming up after the break. Stay with us.
Happy Friday to all. And ooh, it's chilly out there. We've got the wind and then a little bit of flurries. I mean, it looks, you know, festive, but if you're not bundled up properly, you'll feel it today.
Absolutely, especially with the wind, you can get frostbite. It's that time of year. It's feeling like -9 right now, and I think the high is -1. So it's one of those really, really chilly days, even though the snow might not be an issue in the city. But north of us, it could be getting some serious snow. So be careful if you got any plans to drive this weekend north of the city. There's a live shot. There's also some clouds as well to deal with. But otherwise, down in the core, it's not too bad. A little bit chillier with the lake effect. But looking at the current conditions, it's -3 in Toronto, -8 in Ottawa. But the story, again, is the wind chill. It feels like -9. Looking at the highs, we're still below seasonal. Normal would be around 2 degrees. We're going to be a high of -1 and -3 in Peterborough. Overnight, also, it's going to feel chilly. It's going to go up to -3. But again, with that wind chill, it's going to feel like -8 in Toronto, -9 in Peterborough, -9 in Niagara Falls. And looking at the forecast radar, so there's a little bit of flurries heading our way, just a slight bit of activity. But by tomorrow afternoon at around 3 o'clock, we do expect some snow. So tomorrow afternoon, don't be surprised if we're hit with some snow. Nothing major, but still, we will see it hitting the ground. Looking at the long-range forecast, so for today, so chance of flurries, the high -1. Tomorrow, snow beginning in the afternoon at around 2, 3 o'clock, the high +2. And then we've got this warm-up coming slightly. For Sunday, we're talking showers. So we're talking about rain, getting rid of any snow on the ground, the high 5 degrees. And then for Monday, there's a chance of a rain-snow mix, the high 3 degrees. And then Tuesday, again, the high +4. We've got more showers coming in. And then back to typical December weather. -1 is the high on Wednesday, a little chillier on Thursday. -3 is the high with more flurries coming in. So we're kind of going up and down with the snow, the rain, and back to the snow. We'll give you a recap of the forecast later on in the show.
A little melange of things weather-wise. Okay, if you're planning to take transit this weekend, there's going to be another major subway closure starting at 11 o'clock tonight. Line 1 trains will once again not be running between St. Clair West and King stations. This is for planned track work. Shuttle buses, surface routes, and the other side of Line 1 will be available. And for GO Transit riders, trains on the Lakeshore West Line will run hourly this weekend because between West Harbor GO and Union Station. The disruption is to allow for construction at Exhibition GO. Trains won't run at all on the Stouffville line, and replacement buses will only serve Union and stops outside the TTC service area. The European Space Agency is boldly going where no mission has gone before.
Launching 2 satellites to the sun in an extraordinary attempt at a man-made solar eclipse. CTV's Garrett Berry on the science and the excitement.
2, 1. Liftoff early Thursday morning for a small package with a big goal.
It's really of high interest to understand not only the corona, but how the sun works, how it evolves.
Over the next few months, 2 European Space Agency satellites will get into a very precise position, one directly in front of the other, casting a shadow to create an eclipse effect. You won't see it from Earth, but camera equipment on board will get a good look at the sun's outer layers. It's called the corona. Normally, the sun's overwhelming brightness blocks out any view, save for a few minutes during an earthly solar eclipse. With this technology, scientists estimate they can get more than 6 hours of corona footage every day.
Of course, you have more chance to catch a very interesting phenomenon, a very interesting event.
It's a bit of good timing. This year, the sun hit the solar maximum, the high part of its roughly 11-year activity cycle, setting those powerful coronal mass ejections towards Earth with more frequency. That's part of what was behind all those beautiful northern lights that were spotted more often this year. For scientists, it's a perfect opportunity to send their cameras up to space for a look and hopefully catch one in action. But the satellites have to be very precise for this effect to work. No easy feat when you're soaring through space.
The precision has to be within the thickness of a human fingernail, and yet they're 150 meters apart. To be able to do that on Earth would be impressive. To do it in space is just next level.
If all goes well, the first corona pictures are expected in a few months' time. Garrett Berry, CTV News.
A new report suggests a significant percentage of emergency room visits in Canada are not for emergencies. We'll have more on the findings coming up after this short break.
Finding a family doctor continues to be a struggle for many Canadians. Now, a new snapshot reveals doctors could be dealing with patients that are ending up at overcrowded ERs.
CTV's Allison Bamford has more on exactly how much the shortage is straining hospital resources.
This one's not accepting new patients.
A search that can seem never-ending. Chantal Berezowski even considered going out of province just to find a family doctor after hers retired.
I think I called probably 8 clinics that referred me to other clinics.
6 months later, success.
I actually feel like I got lucky.
But Berezowski's roommate is still looking. When's the last time you went to a family doctor?
11 years old, probably.
And how old are you now?
I just turned 24.
Consistency is her biggest challenge since her previous 3 family physicians relocated. More than 5 million Canadians don't have a family doctor, which is one of the reasons that sent 1.2 million patients to the ER over the last year.
Things like colds, sore throats, prescription refills, antibiotic treatment. So really things that could very, very well be managed by a primary care doctor.
Data collected across the country between April 2023 and March 2024 shows 1 in 7 ER visits could have been handled by a family doctor or nurse practitioner. More than half of those could have been addressed virtually.
We have a family medicine and primary care crisis.
Some of the solutions include walk-ins and urgent care centers. Another is teamwork, as some physicians team up with social workers, nurse practitioners, and pharmacists to see patients quicker.
When you invest in team-based care and you give more supports to family doctors to work in teams, that's how you reduce numbers in emergency departments.
Allison Bamford, CTV News.
New figures from the province show a slight increase in the spread of COVID-19. Looking at the last week of November, 12.3% of lab tests came back positive for the virus. That's higher than previous reports, but still considered a moderate level of spread. 631 hospital beds were occupied by COVID-19 patients in that time, and 6 died. Experts say the updated COVID-19 vaccines are the best way to protect against more severe outcomes.
A new study out of the U.S. is raising hopes for new ways to treat depression. Neuroscientists at the University of California, San Francisco observed mice that had been placed under high stress levels. they were found to be less likely to feel enjoyment or pleasure in future situations. The researchers spotted that the depressed mice had less communication going on between two brain regions vital to processing emotions, but they behaved more like non-stressed mice when given treatments to increase brain activity in those targeted areas. The findings were published in the journal Nature.
Good news for dark chocolate lovers. A new study suggests the sweet treat may have health benefits. Dark chocolate contains more cacao, which is less processed than what's in milk chocolate. In the new study, it showed it's possible that higher levels of flavanols in cacao can improve insulin sensitivity, therefore reducing the risk of diabetes. Not all doctors are convinced, with one saying he would not encourage people with diabetes to consume chocolate for better glucose control, but instead turn to dark berries, apples, and tea.
Still to come, unemployment numbers, morning trading, and automobile production. We have your business headlines coming up. Unemployment jumped last month, and that has some economists predicting another big interest rate cut by the Bank of Canada next week.
Andrew Bell of B&M Bloomberg brings us the latest in business.
Hello there. Here are your business headlines. Canada's unemployment rate jumped to 6.8% last month. That's the highest since 2017, outside of the pandemic. The Bank of Canada's next interest rate announcement is due Wednesday of next week. BMO economist Douglas Porter now thinks the bank will go for another big half percentage point reduction in rates. Canadian and US stocks hit new record highs in morning trading. One big gainer in Toronto was the Sea-Doo maker, BRP. That stock has sagged this year amid fears of weak consumer demand, but it rose 7% today. Revenue in the company's latest quarter slid 18%, but it did top analyst forecasts. And finally, Canadian auto plants are set to produce just 1.3 million vehicles this year, the lowest level in decades outside of the pandemic. That's according to the Trillium Network for Advanced Manufacturing. That's your latest in business. I'm Andrew Bell of BNN Bloomberg.
BMO Financial Group significantly missed earnings expectations after it once again set aside much more money than expected to cover potential loan losses. The bank is trading up by about 4% for the day. The same can't be said for TD Bank, which is seeing shares slide further this afternoon. That followed a move by Canada's second largest lender to suspend its earnings forecast. TD said it's doing so as it takes into account a multi-billion-dollar penalty following a U.S. probe into its anti-money laundering program.
Honda is recalling more than 200,000 vehicles in Canada and the U.S. over fuel leak concerns. The recall includes 2023 and 2024 Honda Passports, as well as Honda Pilots from model years 2023 and 2025. The automaker says an issue with the fuel pipe could cause it to disconnect, and in the event of a crash, it may increase the risk of a fire. Owners of all affected models are asked to take their vehicles to an authorized Honda dealer for inspection.
With car prices at record highs, buying a new vehicle is a big decision, and you'll want to keep one on the road and out of the shop.
Every year, Consumer Reports ranks the best car brands, and this year, there have been some big changes in their list. CTV's Pat Foran has this consumer alert.
Engineers and automotive experts at Consumer Reports put every car they buy through more than 50 tests.
Is everything, from acceleration and braking and high-speed maneuvers on the track.
Researchers compare over 250 models on road performance, comfort, reliability, owner satisfaction, and safety. And testing doesn't end at the office.
We live with these vehicles every single day. We take them home. We drive them on public roads. We put our families in them. We go to the grocery store. We use all of this data combined with our survey information to figure out who makes the best cars.
Among the 32 brands in the 2025 report card, the top 5 remain unchanged from last year, with one significant shift. Subaru claims the top spot. The reason, reliability.
When they design or redesign a new model, they tend to iterate on last year's models. And this approach tends to lend itself towards good reliability because they work out the kinks, so to speak, over time. On top of that, their vehicles perform well in our testing.
Also rounding out the top 5, BMW, Lexus, Porsche, and Honda.
Part of buying, testing, and living with these vehicles is not only experiencing what is good about them, the best scoring vehicles, but also the things that are maybe annoying or not so good.
At the bottom of the rankings, Dodge, GMC, Land Rover, Rivian, and Jeep.
Even top scoring brands can have vehicles that don't score so well. So it's really important that you do your research and you check the ratings for the vehicles that you're specifically interested in.
Researchers say that's especially true for bigger brands. The more choices there are, the more research you should do. Pat Foran, CTV News.
Changes are coming for Air Canada passengers in the new year, especially for those flying on a budget. From carry-on luggage to seat selection, passengers may face new fees. CTV's Tyler Fleming has the details.
Kisenge Mbaga is heading home to Fredericton.
Today with Porter. Usually it has been with Air Canada.
Air Canada allows free carry-on luggage, but come January 3rd, it's no longer included with basic economy fares within North America. A new charge sparking criticism.
Especially after you pay the tickets, which are usually more expensive already.
That sucks. Service is not getting any better and the prices are getting pretty intense.
That's not all. By late February, checked baggage fees will rise.
For families, this is not very sustainable.
Air Canada's fee for a carry-on bag will be $35.50 for a second. Checked luggage between $35 and $42 and up to $60 for a second. Air Canada says the new charges are to remain competitive. However, industry experts warn the move simply further erodes consumer confidence.
What's the next thing the airlines are going to do? Charge us for the air we breathe on the airline?
Picking seats at this point, I don't do that.
That will cost more too.
We're not done yet with these fees. There are other things that they can do to kind of, further nickel and dime passengers.
And according to the federal government, a cash grab policy.
It's not a stretch to think that the government, through its regulation, can start to provide oversight and management of the way in which these airlines are putting these fees into the marketplace.
But for now, these new fees may force budget-conscious flyers to take a closer look at what's included with a ticket.
We have to pay like this insane amount of money to travel, so it's not very convenient.
Tyler Fleming, CTV News.
Many Canadians say there's an obvious disconnect between economic data and the way they're feeling, and that gap is only growing. CTV's Tim Brooke has more on what the sentiment is called.
Ask Calgarians, and they won't hold back. How do you think the economy is doing right now?
You don't want to know what I have to say about that.
Absolutely, is it doing bad?
Gas costs a lot more.
Prices, inflation is there. Crappy.
Public perception of our economy isn't pretty right now, but the data suggests it might not be as bad as you think. There's a word for that, and it's growing in popularity.
People have been talking about a vibe session.
Vibe session.
The vibe session.
Yes, a vibe session.
A vibe session is a disconnect between data and sentiment.
It means that people's experience of the economy is worse than certain headline statistics might suggest.
Overall inflation is down and interest rates are falling, but economists say that doesn't paint the whole picture.
I do think it's the fact that prices have risen for important items like food, energy, and shelter much more than the overall headline statistics suggest.
Year-over-year grocery price growth outpaced inflation by 2.7% in October, and average housing costs rose 4.8% over the same time. Forget labor rates and GDP, those are things most Canadians focus on.
It is not that your vibes are off, it's that our economic data probably isn't capturing how you're accurately feeling about things, right?
And it could get even tougher. Canada's food price report estimates the cost of groceries will rise as much as 5% next year, meaning a family of 4 will spend an extra $800. Most Canadians have a word for that, too.
Crappy.
Tim Brooke, CTV News, Calgary.
The Maple Leafs will go for a 4th straight win tonight as they host the Washington Capitals. Toronto's coming off a comeback 3-2 win against Nashville Wednesday night that saw Austin Matthews score twice. The team has won 10 of their last 12 games, with their goalie tandem of Joseph Wall and Anthony Stolarz putting up some stellar numbers. Puck drop tonight at Scotiabank Arena is set for just after 7.
3 of 7 here in the quarter. They get some stops here, string it together, and Shea gets right where he wants to.
The Raptors hosted the Oklahoma City Thunder last night, but were no match for their Canadian rival. Toronto-born Shea Gilgeous-Alexander led the Thunder with 30 points. The Raptors were coming off back-to-back wins, but trailed by 25 at the half and lost the game 129-92. The Raptors have the day to collect themselves before they play host to the Dallas Mavericks tomorrow night.
Jays slugger Vladimir Guerrero Jr. has been named the 2024 winner of the Tip O'Neill Award. The honor is awarded annually by the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum to the Canadian player judged to excel on the field while adhering to baseball's highest ideals. Guerrero Jr. was born in Montreal when his father was a star player with the Expos. He had 30 home runs and 103 RBIs last season and led all Canadian players in batting average, hits, and runs. It's his second time winning this honor. He also took home the award back in 2021.
As Taylor Swift wraps up her Eras tour in Vancouver, a major tourist attraction in the city showing its Swiftie pride. The 137 meters long suspension bridge is sporting its very own friendship bracelet with the fitting title of Swift's 2008 album, Fearless. The first Eras Tour show in Vancouver set for tonight. A total of about 160,000 fans are expected to attend her final 3 shows.
Coming up, it's a Christmas staple. The National Ballet's Nutcracker is back on stage, and this year there's a bit of extra magic for 2 dancers. We'll have the love story of one of the lead couples after the break.
A real-life fairy tale love story will be taken to the stage as the National Ballet's Nutcracker returns for the holidays.
CTV's Pauline Chan tells us one of the lead couples just got married this year, and this will be their first time starring together.
Kota Sato noticed Brenna Flaherty when she first joined the company, but then the pandemic happened, and it was difficult because Brenna spent time with her family in the U.S. while Kota went back to his in Japan. But true love prevails, and they were married in Japan last January.
The wedding planning process was a bit difficult just because we were across the world and we had, to translate everything.
It was amazing, and it was so nice to see everyone I loved. Brenna's family and everyone was gathered in the same room, and we celebrated together, and it was just so special.
While they have danced on stage together before, this season's Nutcracker will be the first time they're both playing the leads. And for Brenna, it will be her debut as the Sugar Plum Fairy.
I think Nutcracker for me, and I think a lot of other dancers would say this, is that it sort of is like a benchmark of someone's career. So everyone does Nutcracker in the company, and usually kids do it from the school as well. So you sort of rise up through the ranks.
Kota plays Peter, the stable boy who transforms into the Nutcracker Prince.
He's the good older brother figure for Misha and Marie, and we're great friends. And they're gonna fall asleep at the night after the party, and they're gonna have crazy dream to go to the battle of all the animals and beautiful snow scenes.
Is it difficult for the married couple to also work together?
I think it's easier to dance together because I know how she functions, and I know how we can communicate so well in studio or at home, which helps a lot.
It's a holiday classic that both have worked hard to achieve.
And we hope everyone has a happy and healthy holiday season with your family, friends, and loved ones.
Kota and Brenna have their first performance together on December 14th, and the National Ballet's production of Nutcracker runs December 6th to the 31st. Pauline Chan, CTV News.
Nathan and I have such an appreciation for what they do because we were on stage at the Nutcracker
It does
last
bring
year.
back memories playing clowns. It was fun.
Yes, it was really fun.
All right, let's give you one more look at the forecast before we wrap up this show. There are some watches and warnings north of the city. If you got plans to drive, be careful. Check your GPS. And if you don't have to hit the roads, especially in Barrie, Perry Sound this evening, don't do it. There are watches, warnings because of the snow squalls. As for the city here in Toronto, we're okay. There's a chance of some slight flurries. The high -3, actually, no, the high -1. But right now we're sitting at -3, -4 in Peterborough, -6 in Kingston. Long-range forecast, snow is expected to come tomorrow at around noontime, off and on. Not major amounts, but some snow. And then Sunday is going to turn into showers, the high 5 degrees. For Monday, a rain-snow mix. And then Tuesday, more showers coming in, the high 4. And then we dip back down to -1 and -3 Wednesday and Thursday. So we have some snow, some rain, and then back to snow. Well, that is it for CTV News at noon. Remember, you can get Toronto's breaking news all day long on CP24 and at ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For all of us here, have a pleasant afternoon. I'm Michelle Dubé.
And I'm Nathan Downer. Be sure to join us later for CTV News at 5 and 6. Have a great afternoon.